10 years after we got married, Samuel cheated on me. He shamelessly brought the 2 children of his mistress in front of me, saying they needed a father and that those poor kids deserved pity. Our daughter begged him to stay, but he was unmoved. I didn't cling to him. I took my daughter and left, afraid she would suffer, and I never remarried. Years later, my daughter met a wonderful man. My granddaughter was adorable too. I spent my days taking care of her and living a peaceful life. On my 60th birthday, my daughter and son-in-law told me they were too busy with work and that my granddaughter had a last-minute tutoring session, so they would celebrate my birthday the next day. But that very night, I stumbled upon a local video on social media. In a luxurious hotel room there they were, my daughter, her husband, Samuel, and those 2 children. 6 people, gathered and singing a birthday song. For Samuel's mistress. My daughter even called her Mom Monica. Chapter 1. My daughter had insisted we throw a big celebration for my 60th birthday. I told her not to overdo it, but she said she had seen how hard I worked all these years and that I deserved a grand celebration. Her words truly touched me. Over the years, I had raised her alone, watched her grow up, get married, and start a family of her own. My son-in-law had always been very respectful, treating me as his own mother. My granddaughter was sweet and always called me Grandma so affectionately. I was happy. The pain from Samuel's betrayal had slowly faded, thanks to the love of my family. So when my daughter suggested a big birthday party, my heart was truly warmed. As we grow older, we crave liveliness. The warmth of family gathered around, that is what gives life its meaning. So that day, I woke up early, dressed nicely, took my granddaughter Sophia to school, and left breakfast ready for my daughter and son-in-law before they headed to work. My daughter had said they would handle some work in the morning and return early to celebrate my birthday. I stayed home, tidying up and waiting for them. I waited and waited, long past the time they said they'd be back, but there was still no sign of my daughter. Worried something had happened, I was about to call her when my phone rang. Mom, something urgent came up at work for both Eric and me. It was sudden, and we couldn't get time off. We probably can't celebrate your birthday today. I could hear the guilt in her voice. Though I felt a wave of disappointment, I knew their careers were important, so I steadied my emotions and said, "It's okay. Work comes first. You 2 focus on your jobs. I'll pick up Sophia later." "All right." My daughter quickly interrupted before I could finish. "Mom, it's your birthday today, so don't worry about anything. My friend happens to be going to the school this afternoon, and will bring Sophia to my office. You just relax at home." Thinking about how busy she was and how young Sophia still was, I couldn't help but suggest, "Why don't I go pick her up? You're so busy, and Sophia is at that mischievous age. She might distract you at work." Hearing this, my daughter sounded a bit anxious, her voice noticeably rising. "Oh, Mom, my friend is already on the way. Don't worry, just rest at home. I'll take care of Sophia. I have another meeting soon, so I can't talk right now." Before I could say another word, she quickly hung up. Listening to the busy tone on the line, I sighed. My daughter had been working so hard lately she'd even lost weight. Wanting to care for her, I returned to the kitchen and started preparing a nourishing chicken stew for her and my son-in-law. It would take time to cook, and with the housework done, I sat on the sofa, picked up my phone, and decided to relax a bit. At my age, I enjoy watching videos. I opened the video app and scrolled through several clips, but none caught my interest. Just as I was about to close it, I accidentally tapped on the local section. And with just one glance, I immediately recognized the figure of my daughter, Zoe. Chapter 2. The video had been posted just 30 minutes ago. I opened it without hesitation. It showed a private room in a hotel. My daughter stood by the table, my son-in-law holding Sophia. All 3 of them were smiling. Zoe turned her head slightly, and the camera shifted. And then I saw Samuel. If you ask me who I hate most in this life, without a doubt, it's Samuel. We had loved each other deeply when we were young, and I believed we'd spend our lives together. But everything changed in the 10th year of our marriage. The husband of Samuel's first love had died in an accident, leaving her and her 2 young children alone. At first, Samuel secretly helped them without telling me. When I found out, we had a huge fight. His face flushed red as he shouted at me, calling me heartless. Later, he brought those two children into our home and handed me divorce papers. He said, "Joel and Helen are too young. They can't grow up without a father." He wanted to divorce me, return to his first love, and be a father to her children. As he said those words, our daughter Zoe clung to his leg, crying her heart out, begging her father not to leave. But Samuel turned away and left without hesitation. I didn't want to fight anymore. I demanded most of his assets and took my daughter with me. I changed her surname to mine. Fearing a stepfather might mistreat her, I chose never to remarry. I devoted myself entirely to raising her, watching her grow, go off to college, fall in love, get married, and finally give birth to little Sophia. And through all those years, Samuel never once showed his face. Occasionally, I would hear that he and his first love never had more children. They had poured all their love and energy into raising those two kids as their own diligent, devoted parents. Zoe once told me that she hated Samuel just as much as I did. I believed that the painful memories of our divorce would stay with her, that she would remember my suffering and stay far away from them. I never imagined they would secretly stay in touch. Worse yet, I saw that video Zoe and Samuel, sitting together, speaking softly, not a hint of hatred between them. They even led the birthday song. My son-in-law and Sophia clapped happily, and those two children now grown joined in too. And at the center of it all stood Samuel's first love, Monica. She was as charming as ever, dressed in an elegant gown, standing there like a princess, basking in everyone's attention. Monica and I happened to share the same birthday. But the most absurd part, my daughter, whom I had loved more than life itself, after finishing the song, walked up to Monica, embraced her warmly, and called her Mom. Chapter 3. The phone slipped from my hand and crashed to the floor, the video still playing on loop. My chest throbbed with pain, but even more so, I was overcome with disbelief, desperately searching for some excuse. The daughter who had always stood by me, who had witnessed her father's cruelty, who had seen Monica pretending to be some innocent damsel offering false apologies while tearing our family apart. How could she call that woman Mom? I couldn't believe it. I sat frozen on the sofa for a long time, until the bitter smell wafting from the kitchen snapped me back. The chicken stew had burned. I quickly turned off the stove, and in my frantic state, grabbed the pot barehanded, burning a large patch of skin on my fingers. I was about to tend to the burn when suddenly the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I saw the delivery man holding a small cake, the one I had ordered for myself. A tiny little cake. As you grow older, it's easier to become sentimental. So after hanging up with Zoe, I had ordered a small cake online, just a one-person celebration. But still, it was my birthday. I placed the cake on the coffee table, lit a few candles, clasped my hands together, and closed my eyes to make a wish. I had long decided what my wish would be. I wished for my beloved daughter to have a life full of happiness and ease, for my son-in-law to always love her, and for little Sophia to grow up healthy and bright. That had always been my wish. But now the moment I closed my eyes, all I could see was Zoe lying to me about having to work late, just so she could take her husband and daughter to Monica's grand birthday party. In the video, Monica was surrounded by them, laughing joyfully, as though they were one big, happy family. And here I was sitting alone, cold, abandoned, like a fool, like a joke. The daughter, who had once been part of me, now felt like a blade twisting in my heart, the pain unbearable. When you get older, your emotions betray you easily, and my tears streamed uncontrollably. Wiping them away, I made a new wish. I hope that in whatever days I've left, I can live happily and joyfully. That was all. For so many years, all my wishes had been for my children, never for myself. But looking back now, it truly hadn't been worth it. I took 2 bites of the cake. It was greasy, tasteless. I checked the time again. It was 11 at night. Normally, by this hour, I would have finished my housework, tucked Sophia into bed, and gone to my room to sleep. But tonight, I couldn't sleep. Just then there was noise at the door. Zoe tiptoed in, but when she saw me sitting in the living room, she froze, looking nervous. My son-in-law and Sophia followed, still chatting about the birthday party. But when they saw me, both fell silent immediately. Sophia, pretending nothing had happened, blinked her big innocent eyes, stretched out her arms, and said she missed Grandma, wanting a hug. Watching her run toward me, I didn't pick her up like I usually would, full of love. From the moment she was born, I had poured my heart and soul into raising her just as I had with Zoe. My son-in-law had no parents, and both he and Zoe worked long hours. Life in this big city wasn't easy. So I had always cared for Sophia, giving my daughter and son-in-law peace of mind so they could focus on their work. But now, this little one just like her mother had betrayed me too. She rubbed her shoulders, saying how exhausting work had been today, and promised we'd have a big celebration tomorrow. Her eyes landed on the small cake on the table, and she froze for a moment. "Mom, did you buy the cake yourself?" Perhaps it was because the cake looked so small, or because the cake they had for Monica had been so grand today. I could clearly see the guilt in her eyes. I had also been paying for their utilities, daily groceries, even Sophia's private tutoring, all of it with my own money. Now that I had made the decision to leave, I certainly wouldn't be giving them another penny. Whether they could manage without my help was no longer my concern. Besides, I actually owned another property, a place I had never told anyone about, not even Zoe. I had bought it long ago to protect myself, worried that my son-in-law might turn out like Samuel. I kept it in my name, planning to transfer it to my daughter after I was gone. But now it seemed there was no need. That property would become my new home. And with my generous monthly pension, I could live quite comfortably on my own. When I came out of my room, Zoe was still crying, and the cake was still sitting on the coffee table. The whole place was in chaos. Without hesitation, I grabbed my suitcase and left. Chapter 4. By the time I settled in, it was already 3 in the morning. After taking a hot shower, I crawled into bed. When I checked my phone, there were no missed calls, no unread messages. After all this was a daughter I had raised for over 20 years. It still hurt a little. But perhaps that was for the best. Pain made it easier to let go and not be persuaded to return. I canceled my usual morning alarm. Then I turned off the lights, pulled the covers over me, and pushed all those thoughts from my mind, closing my eyes to sleep. But that night, I couldn't sleep well. Over and over, I dreamed of the years I had spent with Zoe. Back when Samuel had insisted on divorcing me, though I had taken most of his assets, Zoe had been so young. The trauma had hit her heart so badly that for a while, she couldn't even attend school. I had no choice but to quit my job temporarily and stay by her side every single day. She often slept fitfully, waking in the middle of the night with nightmares, crying, begging for her mommy and daddy not to leave her. I would hold her close and sing the lullabies that had comforted her since she was a baby, staying with her all through the night. She would sleep peacefully, but I would wake with a sore back and an aching arm. Back then, when Zoe saw me in pain, she would clutch my hand tightly and start massaging my arm. "Mommy, I'll rub it so it won't hurt anymore," she would say, so sweet and obedient. I took a deep breath, opened my eyes, and glanced at the time on my phone. Even though I had canceled the alarm, after so many years, my body clock woke me at the usual hour. Normally, I would head to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Then I'd call Sophia to get up. She was still small and always liked to laze in bed. I would cheer her up, carry her out of bed, help her wash up, braid her hair into a cute little style, and then give her breakfast. After she finished eating, I would take her to kindergarten. When I returned, Zoe and Eric would have already eaten and left for work. I would clear the dishes, clean the house. My whole day would revolve around this family. There was barely a moment for myself. But now things were different. After waking, all I needed to do was make breakfast for myself. After eating, I could take a walk through the neighborhood, stretch my limbs, a comfortable, relaxed life. But before I finished my morning stroll, Zoe called. I ignored the first call. She called again a second time. A third time. It wasn't until the fifth call that I accidentally pressed the answer button. I didn't turn on the speaker, but Zoe's voice was still surprisingly loud.
"Mom,
Where did you go all night? How old are you now, running off like some rebellious teenager? You didn't even think about Sophia's going to be late for school. And there's no breakfast. Are you really going to let us go to work on empty stomachs? You know I have an important meeting today. I can't be late." Every word as if taking care of them had always been my duty. I said nothing. But on the other end, Zoe kept talking. "All I asked was for you to help with the child, cook some meals, clean the house. You've been living comfortably at home while Eric and I work hard for this family, getting up early, staying up late. And now you just disappeared and you think you're being irrational? Irrational, I couldn't help but let out a bitter smile. This was the daughter who shared my blood. I had dedicated my whole life to her. Yet she seemed to never see my sacrifices, always taking it all for granted. If it had been yesterday, perhaps I would still feel hurt, reluctant to let go of these years we had depended on one another. But from this moment on, I was truly disappointed in her. Zoe, though I lived in your house, your mortgage, and all the other expenses were paid with my money. I worked hard taking care of this family. If you think that's living comfortably, then from now on it's your turn to handle everything. As for me, since you no longer want me as your mother, I no longer need a daughter like you. With that, I hung up, not bothering with her anymore. Even so, my mood was heavy. So I changed clothes and decided to go to the mall. For so many years, my life had revolved around Zoe, her husband, and her daughter. I rarely went shopping, rarely bought clothes for myself. Now that all these burdens had been lifted, my savings and monthly pension were more than enough for me to live well. Buying pretty clothes, handbags, jewelry, becoming a carefree, stylish old woman, honestly, it sounded quite nice. Chapter 5. But what I didn't expect was that the very first time I decided to indulge myself and go shopping, I would run into Samuel at the mall. He was walking with Monica. The two of them entered a clothing store, and we came face to face. When Samuel saw me, he looked evasive. Monica, on the other hand, smiled smugly and walked right up to me, wearing the same arrogant expression she had the first time we met, just as hateful. "Julia, you're shopping too?" She didn't bother hiding her mocking smile, her eyes scanning me from head to toe before shaking her head and speaking in a condescending tone. "Look at you staying home every day looking after kids and doing housework. Even if you buy a nice outfit, when do you ever have a chance to wear it? Or maybe you've got your eye on some old man lately and you're trying to dress up to catch his attention." People naturally love gossip. Her voice was loud enough that many other customers in the store turned to look. This woman, once the other woman, clearly had no intention of being polite. As more and more eyes turned toward us, I replied coldly, "How could I ever compare to you? Back then, when your husband had just passed, you threw yourself into my husband's arms with 2 children in tow. Skills like yours, even after all these years, I could never learn." The customers present, many of whom had seen life's ups and downs, easily caught the deeper meaning behind my words, even if I hadn't said it outright. One shopper, just walking in, exclaimed, "Oh, so she's the other woman." Hearing that, Monica's face turned bright red. Samuel quickly stepped forward, trying to scold me. "Julia, don't go too far." I laughed and turned to the shopper, pointing at Samuel. "That's the man who was seduced back then. Said those poor children had no father, so he abandoned his own daughter to become their dad. To this day, those children don't even carry his surname, and he doesn't care. Isn't he noble?" Those 2 children still only called Samuel uncle, and that had always been a sore spot for him. Now that I'd laid it all out in public, his face darkened even more, but he couldn't say a word because everything I said was true. He could only glare at me angrily as laughter rippled through the crowd, calling him a fool. Monica was furious too. Unable to argue with me, she grabbed Samuel, ready to leave. But fate had other plans at that exact moment. Zoe happened to arrive at the mall after work and bumped into Monica. "Mom, Monica, what's going on?" Seeing Monica's upset expression, Zoe immediately asked anxiously. Monica, who had been seething just moments before, straightened up and looked pitiful, glancing back at me. "Your mother, she's still angry with me. It's my fault. I shouldn't have let you come celebrate my birthday." As she spoke, Monica lowered her head, looking completely wronged. Zoe looked up at me. Perhaps she still harbored anger from this morning, because she didn't hesitate to take Monica's hand and approach me, her tone sharp. "Mom, is it really necessary to keep throwing tantrums? Look at Monica. Mom's kind and gentle. You're the one always losing your temper. Any man would know which woman to choose." What a wonderful daughter. I had raised such a direct knife to my heart. Without thinking, I raised my hand and slapped her hard across the face. A child who had once been a part of me should never have turned into a knife, stabbing me in the heart. It was all too ironic. "Mom, you hit me again?" She covered her face, shocked. I looked at her coldly. The heart that had once beat for her was slowly hardening, turning to anger and then to a deep, cold calm that comes after complete disappointment. To me now, Zoe felt like a stranger. That stranger was no longer my daughter. I didn't want her anymore. So I simply extended my hand and pushed her right toward Monica and Samuel. If you prefer them so much, then from now on call them Mom and Dad. I'm not lucky enough to be your mother, nor do I want to be anymore. She actually seemed amused by my words, as if my reaction delighted her. Grabbing Monica's arm, as if to provoke me, she said loudly, "If you don't want to be my mom, fine. I don't need a mom like you, so unstable and emotional. Monica mom is wonderful. Today I'm going to have dinner with them. We'll be one big, happy family. Unlike you, always clinging to old grudges, complaining day after day." Her gestures were so exaggerated that her ID card slipped from her pocket and fell to the floor. Hearing the sound, I instinctively looked down. The card had landed face up. The photo looked recent, and the name read, Zoe. And that was when I realized my daughter, whom I had loved with all my heart, had secretly changed her surname long ago without ever telling me. Zoe noticed where I was looking, and though there was still a flicker of guilt in her eyes, she touched her nose and explained, "It's just a surname, right? Isn't it normal to take the father's name? Dad doesn't have any children with his surname. You don't care because you're a woman, but we can't let Dad's line go without descendants. It's just a name, why make a big deal about it?" The more she spoke, the more annoyed she seemed, even though I hadn't said a word. Still, she looked impatient. I kept staring at that name for a long time. Once upon a time, she had said she didn't want her father anymore. She had once said that we had each other, that we were the only family we had, and that was why she wanted my surname. But now it meant that the last bond between us had been severed. I waved my hand, my tone calm. "That's fine. You can have whatever surname you want. It has nothing to do with me anymore." After all, I had truly decided I no longer wanted this daughter. Chapter 6. On my way home, I blocked all of Zoe's contacts. I cut off all communication. I checked my savings and saw that this month's pension had just arrived. Without hesitation, I booked a small, elegant tour online, packed my suitcase, and set off on a trip. All these years, I had devoted myself entirely to Zoe and had never once had the chance to see the beautiful mountains and rivers of this vast world. She had always said one day, when she grew up, when she graduated, when she got a job, when she got married, when she had children, when the kids were older, she would take me traveling. But year after year, I waited, and that day never came. Fortunately now, on my own, I could still go see the wonders of the world. I visited the mountains, then the sea, and enjoyed chatting with others in the tour group. One of them, I called Sister Miranda. Sister Miranda, like me, had dedicated her whole life to her family. Her biggest wish had been for her husband and children to take her traveling. But even such a simple wish had been met with scorn. They told her she was being immature. They said that at her age, she should stay home and care for the grandchildren, and that it was shameful for someone her age to be out wandering. Hurt, she had used her savings, blocked her family, and embarked on this spontaneous journey. We shared similar perspectives, having gone through similar experiences. We had a wonderful time together on the trip. In fact, before we parted ways, we exchanged contact information and agreed to plan our next trip together. But just as there are joys, there are troubles too. In our tour group, there was an older man, a year older than me. His wife had passed away from illness years ago, and though he had children and grandchildren, he still lived a cheerful life. But he said that without a woman in the house, there was always a sense of loneliness. When he learned that I had been divorced for years, his eyes lit up. He said he would be willing to settle down with me, to live together. I wasn't interested, and I didn't want to encourage him. But still, he followed me all the way to my doorstep. Dragging my suitcase back home, I hadn't even unpacked when I saw him standing there at my door, holding a large bouquet of red roses. "Julia, Luke, we're the same age. You're divorced, I'm widowed. Why don't we live together? I like you very much. I'll give you all my savings. I won't ask for much. My children take care of the grandkids. You'd only need to take care of Mado, the laundry, cook, and go for walks with me. If my kids are busy, you could help watch the grandkids too." It's not too hard listening to his words. I took a deep breath. If I were 20 years younger, I would have grabbed a mop and thrown it at his head. But now, at my age, I feared I'd strain my back before I even picked it up. So I simply called building security to have him removed. Julia, why are you being so cold? Don't you like me? Even though I'm over 60 now, I'm still a handsome old monyod, have some status with me. You've been alone for so many years, don't you feel lonely? As the guard escorted him out, he struggled and kept talking. Finally fed up, I threw the bag of garbage I was holding right at him. The commotion was so loud that Zoe, who had just entered the complex, immediately saw me.
Mom.
What are you doing here? She asked, hurrying over. I had just returned from a 3-month vacation, feeling relaxed and having gained a bit of weight. Unlike her, she looked thin and worn, clearly having lost weight. I said nothing. She came closer, looked at the old man still struggling nearby, and seemed to realize something. She immediately pointed at me. Mom, how old are you? And you're still thinking of finding a companion? Aren't you ashamed? Her eyes were full of condemnation, and she looked furious. Then she started hitting the old man with her handbag, shouting at him to leave. As she hit him, she yelled, Mom, have you lost your mind? At your age, if some old man's interested in you, it's probably just for your money. And here you are, foolishly falling for his trap. After driving the man away, she turned to me and pointed to the building behind me. What's going on now? You've been ignoring my calls all this time and now you're renting a place here, living it up? She seemed to realize something and grew even more annoyed. Then she said, You're living carefree while I'm at home struggling with work and raising a child all by myself. I'm overwhelmed and you're just making things harder. You don't want to care for the child, you won't do housework, and now you're out here enjoying life, messing around with old men. What a great mother you are. The sarcasm in her voice was unmistakable. I looked at her, my gaze cold. I told you last time, if you prefer Monica, then go be her daughter. As for me, I no longer wish to be your mother. And as for the mess you've got at home, that's no longer my responsibility. Understood? Hearing my words, she finally seemed to realize that I was truly determined. But she still couldn't stop herself from scolding me. What do you mean you're no longer my mother? We're bound by blood. You gave birth to me, of course I'm your daughter. So just come home soon. There's a mess at the house. You used to pay the mortgage and utilities, and now you've disappeared without a word. Do you know how lost you left Eric and me? We don't earn that much to begin with, and we still have a child to raise. We haven't saved a single penny these past few months, and it's all your fault. Hearing her accusations, I slapped her again. Get out of here. I was truly disappointed. I didn't want to hear another word from her. I turned and walked away. She covered her cheek where I had slapped her and stomped the ground angrily.
Mom.
Seriously? I was just telling the truth, and you hit me for that. No wonder Dad didn't want you back then. That comment stopped me in my tracks. I turned around. She looked at me with raised eyebrows, as if expecting me to soften. I threw the other bag of trash I was holding straight at her head. Zoe, back then when Samuel wanted to divorce me, it was because he was blind a fool. Between him and me, it was just a piece of paper. Once that was torn, there was nothing left. But you're different. You're connected to him by blood, and even then, he chose to abandon you for 2 children who weren't even his. Deep down you know who the real fool is. Maybe I never thought the day would come when my own flesh and blood would turn against me. But if this is how it had to be, so be it. She might be my flesh and blood, but now I see her as rotten flesh, and cutting it away is the only way to heal. No one holds on to rotten flesh. It simply isn't worth it. Zoe isn't worth it. I turned again, and her face flushed with anger. She was about to say something else, but suddenly her phone rang. She answered it, then cried out in shock. What? The house is on fire? Immediately, she turned and ran back. The woman who had come with her also ran off, shouting, Miss, are we still seeing the house today? Chapter 7. Eric's parents had died when he was young, so after he and Zoe married and had a child, I moved in with them. I cared for the child and managed their household. I had lived in that community for many years and knew quite a few people, especially Lily. She loved gossip more than anyone. Whenever something happened in the neighborhood, she was always the first to know and would share it with us old friends. Like this time when Zoe's house caught fire within 30 minutes, Lily called me on video. We had always gotten along well. Even after I moved out, she would still ask how I was and tell me not to hesitate if I needed anything. So, of course, I didn't ignore her call. As soon as I answered, I saw her excited face, her camera pointed at Zoe's apartment window. "Julia, your ungrateful daughter Karma finally caught up with her." She laughed, then began telling me everything that had happened these past months. Back then, when I went on my trip, Zoe couldn't find me and was still furious about the slaps. So she stayed close with Monica. Monica's 2 kids still weren't married. Joel was a troublemaker, never liked school, didn't like working, and spent his days lazing around at home. Helen didn't want to work either, always dreaming of marrying rich. When Monica saw that Zoe had bought a big house, even if it still had a mortgage, her family circumstances were quite good. So Monica decided to send her 2 kids to Zoe's place, saying they should spend more time together as family. Monica's kids didn't hold back. They came by every couple of days, always empty-handed, and leaving with armfuls of things. Joel even invited a group of friends over to party. The house was a mess, full of smoke and chaos. Eric was furious. He fought with Zoe, but Joel kept up his antics, completely unfazed. This time, Joel secretly brought people over again. They drank heavily, and one of them, lying on the sofa, knocked over a half-full bottle of liquor. A cigarette ash set the sofa on fire, and with alcohol spilled on the floor, the flames spread quickly. Eric arrived home just in time to see thick smoke pouring from the window. Joel barely escaped in time. When he saw Eric, who had just returned from work, the first thing he did was curse him, blaming the poor quality of the house for nearly killing him and demanding compensation. Eric snapped and fought him on the spot. Even with a crowd trying to break them up, they couldn't be stopped. When Zoe came home, Joel and Eric immediately stopped fighting and both turned their anger on Zoe, cursing her out. In short, after all the chaos, the house was unlivable for the foreseeable future. Zoe had originally planned to stay at Samuel's place for a while, but he flat out refused, saying there was no room for them and telling them to go to a hotel with not a shred of sympathy. A crowd had gathered outside the apartment building, munching on sunflower seeds and watching the drama unfold. Lily pointed her camera at them, giving me a live broadcast. In the end, Lily said to me, "Bad people always get what they deserve. Don't feel sorry for her. A daughter like that isn't worth your pity." I nodded, feeling nothing for her. My disappointment had long reached its peak. Watching the video of them all tangled up in their mess just seemed ridiculous to me. Family ties had become something utterly ironic by that point. Chapter 8. In the end, Zoe thought she had won. She moved her family in to prove her decision was right. But what she didn't know was that very choice would completely ruin her. As for me, after that video call with Lily, I stopped paying much attention to Zoe's affairs. Recently, I found a new hobby: handmade pottery. Going to the workshop, shaping small, cute crafts, it really helped me relax. I went several days in a row. And as fate would have it, right next to the pottery studio was a hotel. Just as I was leaving with my finished pieces, I ran into Zoe at the hotel entrance. And standing in front of her half-dressed were Eric and Helen. "Eric, we've been married 7 years. I gave you a beautiful daughter. How could you be with Helen behind my back?" she shouted at the top of her lungs. Little Sophia clung to her hand, looking frightened. Helen's clothes weren't even fully adjusted. Over the years, she had dated many men, always carefree. Even now, under everyone's gaze, she showed no shame, instead leaning on Eric in front of the crowd. "Zoe, you're just an old, worn-out woman now. No one helps you with the child, and you had to quit your job to stay home. You don't even take care of yourself anymore. How could Eric not be tired of seeing you every day?" Then she threw Eric a flirtatious glance. "Eric, do you prefer this old woman or me?" Helen was charming and, more importantly, young. Eric and Zoe had been arguing constantly, and cracks had long formed in their marriage. Now, caught in the act, Eric showed no guilt. He said bluntly, "Zoe, why make such a scene? You should be home taking care of the child instead of running around. What man doesn't cheat? Look at your dad, didn't he leave your mom for another woman? And you forgave him. You even call that woman mom. If you could accept that, why can't you accept this?" Hearing Eric's words, Zoe's eyes widened. She shook her head over and over. "Eric, Eric, How can you say that? How can you say that? She seemed to break down, trying to hit him. Eric pushed her aside, shielding Helen in his arms, looking at Zoe with a mocking smile as if she were a clown. Zoe, let's stop pretending. Do you really think your dad cares that much about you? If I hadn't worked so hard to buy that house, do you think he'd even consider taking you back? He just wants to squeeze more money out of you for Joel and Helen. And you fell for a thoping for love, huh? But at least you did one good thing. Helen is much more fun and understanding than you. Let's divorce. I don't want the kid. You keep her. We'll split the money 50-50. And since you were fine with what happened to your mom, I guess you won't have the face to argue, right? Every word pierced Zoe's heart. She became hysterical, sobbing uncontrollably. Helen remained calm, casually tossing her hair back, and even bent down to look at little Sophia. Hey, little one, don't you think your mom is overreacting? Making such a big deal over something so small. Hearing that, Zoe's eyes widened instantly. Stay away. Don't you dare touch my daughter. She yanked Sophia toward her forcefully. The child's delicate little arm hurt from the pull. Sophia immediately began crying and pushed at Zoe. You're a bad mom. I don't want you. Sophia, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. I raised you. How can you say that? Heartbroken, Zoe raised her hand to strike the child. Sophia bit her wrist, making Zoe wince in pain. Then the little girl ran straight into Helen's arms, glaring angrily at Zoe. You're a bad mom. You always yell at me. I like Auntie better. I want her to be my mom. Hearing that, Zoe's eyes went wide. She looked like she wanted to say something, but suddenly, her gaze locked with mine from the crowd. In that moment, her eyes were filled with complexity and mockery. Maybe she finally realized the very things she had once told me were now coming back to strike her heart. Chapter 9. After witnessing the entire scene, Lily spent the whole day delighting in the gossip, sending me dozens of 60-second voice messages all about what she had seen today. Ever since the house fire, Zoe's family of 3 had moved into Samuel's home. With the cracks in their marriage, the constant arguing continued. And with me gone, someone had to take Sophia to and from school. Eventually, Zoe quit her job to stay home with the child. Meanwhile, Helen had her eyes on Eric's money. Over time, with intentional flirting, the two got involved. Samuel and Monica knew about it and even helped cover for them. Even Sophia had seen it a few times, but a simple pacifier was enough to keep her quiet. In short, as the chaos unfolded, Zoe, knowing everything, was eventually kicked out by the whole family. Even her beloved Sophia cried and refused to go with her, earning to run into Helen's arms, calling her mom. When I returned to the community after my walk, I saw Zoe at the entrance. She was crouched in a corner. When she saw me, she looked like a pitiful stray kitten. Reaching out, tugging at the hem of my skirt, she pleaded, Mom, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? I looked at her, this daughter, who had once been closest to me. If it had been before, my heart would have shattered, and without hesitation, I would have grabbed a knife and stormed into Samuel's house. Even if it had cost me my life, I would have once avenged my daughter. But after everything that had happened, I had come to understand perhaps this was her karma. So as I watched her tears fall, I truly felt nothing. It was as if a stranger was shedding worthless tears, hoping that by doing so, I would forgive her, take her back into my home, and return things to the way they were, where she never lifted a finger, and I treated her as my beloved daughter. But why should I? She might have once been my precious child. But now she was no longer. I let go of her hand without a shred of emotion and calmly said, You must have me confused with someone else. I'm not your mother. I once had a daughter in this life, but in my heart, she died a long time ago. As for you, go back where you came from. Don't show your face again, or I won't hesitate to call security. Understood? After saying that, I ignored her desperate cries and walked straight home. Chapter 10. Zoe came looking for me several times after that, but I refused to see her. I had made up my mind she was no longer my daughter. She must have sensed how firm my decision was, because eventually she stopped coming. And I continued with my life-taking walks, making pottery, shopping for pretty dresses. It was finally time to enjoy it as I should. When I next heard news of her, it was half a month later. Zoe had suffered a lot as a child. She had always been mentally fragile. Back then, I had stayed by her side day after day until she had regained her joy and spirit. But now abandoned by everyone, even her beloved daughter no longer wanted her. Under the pretense of letting everything go, she gathered the entire family, saying it was for one last reunion meal. After the meal, she announced that she would leave for another city and never return. And that meal she had prepared herself. The ambulance arrived that night. Zoe had purchased a large amount of rat poison, paraquat, and various other toxic substances from the market. She mixed them all into the dishes. And while everyone was suffering from the poisoning, she sealed the doors and windows and turned on the gas. When they were finally discovered, they were all unconscious on the floor, foaming at the mouth. With all the toxins combined, even those who hadn't eaten much were already beyond saving. None of them survived the next day. Even 6-year-old Sophia lost her life. The story made national headlines. The public dug into their past. They learned that Samuel had always been a scoundrel. That Monica had clawed her way up as the other woman. That Joel was a thug, loved fighting, bullying girls, utterly repulsive. That Helen loved stealing other people's boyfriends, just like her mother. That Eric was also a disgrace, despised by everyone. That even Sophia, at such a young age, was chillingly cold-hearted. That Zoe, blinded by her heart and mind, had ultimately faced the consequences of her own actions. The whole country knew about them, now a group so vile that everyone wished they could spit on their graves. As for me, I made a brief appearance in the news trends. I took the opportunity to do a live stream of my pottery. It drew many viewers. Some people felt I had suffered too much. They sent me donations. I donated every penny I received from that live stream to help others in need. And as for me, from that moment on, I had no more ties, no more burdens. I lived a carefree and happy life.